Hello everyone and welcome back to Let's Play Banjo-Kazooie. In the last part we started off Rusty Bucket Bay, my least favorite level in the game, and got at least some of the more annoying things out of the way to start. And our first order of business today is we're actually going to climb these shipping crates right here to get onto this TNT crate. There's technically two things tied to this area. First off, in the distance you can just barely see it, the witch switch for Rusty Bucket Bay is over here, and this is one of the most oddly precise jumps in the game. Every single time I play this, I am attempting to make this jump, failing, having to jump and climb back up, and then trying again for upwards of 6 to 7 minutes. I don't know why, that jump's just so weird, it's just rough. The best way to technically make it in my experience is to be in a Talon Trot formation, do a jump, and then do either the mid-air feather attack or a double jump to just get extra distance, but even then it's not super reliable. I don't know why that, of all jumps in the game, just feels so much more precise than the others, and I'm not even sure if there's an easier way to make it. Because there's not like a flight pad out here in the main part of Rusty Bucket Bay you can use to reach up there. You just gotta make that jump, and it's weird. Maybe it's easier if you go do the thing tied to this crate first. I've actively never tried. Future me, see if you can find anything about that. I kind of doubt that's the case, though. In the meanwhile, let's talk about that crate. It's a TNT crate, which obviously means it's explosive, but if we come over here, we can shoulder bash this switch to have it drop and destroy the floor directly below it. That technically leads to the combat challenge that every world has for Rusty Bucket Bay, but it's also the thing I'm going to save for last in the world, as I feel it's the most appropriate closer here. Notably, and you just saw it there in the distance, there's another crane like this on the other side of the world I was directly next to, if not on top of, last time to grab some notes. But I didn't do the main thing that I was tied to at the time, because I like to save that Jiggy for last as well. What the one on the other side does is that when you shoulder bash the up button, it raises a cage that will then start a timer, and there's a Jiggy underneath it. You need to get to where the cage is in time to grab the Jiggy before it goes back down automatically. That is another timer in this world that is very bizarrely tight, and every time I play this game, for some reason, I forget the exact way you're meant to do it. There's the orange Jinjo for this world, by the way. My next order of business is to go to the other side of the crane we're directly next to and open up the last toll bridge that you can use in the level to access the whole perimeter. And this one actively does get pretty well placed, because I actively do a jump cut in a moment. Because, in my memory, the orange Jinjo is always the last one I grab. So, I'm going, okay, I missed one, where did I miss it? If you remember last time, I even directly highlighted where it was. It's in the shipping container I'm about to be directly next to, hidden behind some boxes. It's the one we entered via the top last time. There's a jump cut in a moment precisely because I'm just sorting through my mind going, wait, I'm missing a Jinjo, where is it? Like I believe I said last time, Rusty Bucket Bay is a level I almost always forget something in. Either I'm forgetting the way to get to the Jiggy under the cage with this crane we're next to, I'm forgetting the password and where it is directly for the whistles on the one side of the ship, I'm forgetting the Jiggy that was directly under the camera in the one other shipping container on the opposite side of the world, or I'm forgetting this Jinjo. Something about this level almost always goes awry. And to an extent, the same is to be said about the final world in the game, but there's at least more of a methodology for how I like to go through that world, just due to how that specific one is set up, which we'll talk about even later this very video. That's all 5 Jinjos in this world, so that's our 6th Jiggy, 4 more to go, and at this point I know where they all are. I believe next up we go for the other one tied to a crane that I was talking about a moment ago. And the reason the timer for this one is so strict is I think because I usually try to do it the wrong way several times. You see, when you hit that crane, the cage is going to rise on top of the ship. And in my head, I need to, for some reason, either do a long jump over there using the shock jump pad or try to do a double jump onto the safety boat. What you need to do is climb the ladder that's on the one side of the crane to get to the top of the crane and fall down from the top of it. I don't know why that takes me several minutes to remember every time I play the game, but it does. While I'm grabbing this Jiggy, though, let's go back to talking about the rare testing team, as we started talking about, I believe, last time. The next person in the credits for this, in that regard, is Adam Munton, who actually started as a testing team member on this game. They were then a rare staff member in Mickey's Racing Adventure, Conker's Pocket Tales, they were a tester, Jet Force Gemini, and Donkey Kong 64, they were a tester. He then did similar work for both versions of Perfect Dark back in 2000, but his last game at Rare was Mickey Speedway USA just as a member of the development team. After that, between 2001 and 2005, he changed what he usually worked on and also left Rareware to join Next Level Games, where he's been ever since. He's been an environment artist in Mario Strikers Charge, Spider-Man Friend or Fro, Transformers Cybertron Adventure, Captain America Super Soldier, Luigi's Mansion Dark Moon, Metroid Prime Fed Force, Luigi's Mansion 3, and Mario Strikers Battle League, where he still works today. Next up in the game testers for Rare specifically is Sean Reed, who started as a tester on Diddy Kong Racing and GoldenEye 007 on the N64. In both games, though, he was uncredited. Then they worked on this. Then they were an assistant director for Star Fox Adventures. They were still with Rare through the Microsoft purchase, working on the Viva Pinata game, specifically the DS one. Nuts and Bolts, they were part of the development team there. Connect Sports, they were a direct designer. At some point, though, they left Rare and started working on things like Backgammon Blitz for the PS3 as a producer, Pure Pull for the PC as a creative producer, Mantis Burn Racing as a creative director, and then they kind of stuck with racing games from then on, working on things like Raging Justice for PC as a compatibility playtester, and F1 2020 through 2025 as an additional designer. Welcome to the ship's navigation room, by the way. The rooms that are held within windows, I think, are probably the hardest thing to find in Rusty Bucket Bay at large, especially if you're playing this on an older TV, if only because the windows do a better job of blending in at the time. But on modern releases of the game, it's much easier to find these rooms because they stick out just a little bit more. With that said, worth noting, the next room like this in specific we're going to enter is actively where Rusty Bucket Bay's Stop-N-Swop mechanic is, should you input the cheat code for it, or if you're playing the 360/Rare Replay release. Similarly to the Green Mystery Egg back in Mad Monster Mansion, though, the only indication that there's a Stop-N-Swop mechanic tied to the room in question is in the cheat code itself. It's not like the barrel in the wine cellar or the door in Gobi's Valley where there's just clearly something there you can't access. In specific, here in the Captain's Cabin, the red mystery egg will be here if you go to the Treasure Trove Cove Sandcastle and enter "Cheat this secret you'll be grabbing in the Captain's Cabin." Which, mind you, again, that sheet is very direct for where it gets placed. It'll be right here, I believe, rotating on top of the bed. But notably, you also need to come into the Captain's Cabin here in order to grab a Jiggy directly in the closet, and you do need to do a backflip to grab it. Just be careful when you first break down the door to get in there, though, because there is one of those lizard or tadpole enemies in the grate directly behind it that's very easy to miss if you're just rushing into there. I've taken more hits there than I'd honestly like to admit over the years. For my next destination, we gotta climb, because as with pretty much every world in the game, there is a Jiggy at Rusty Bucket Bay's highest peak. In specific, it's on top of one of the two smokestacks. You do need to do a little bit of trekking back and forth between them over thin platforms, but I like to save this for late, usually because I get my last notes in doing this. I don't think falling from the top of the smokestack will usually be enough to kill you, especially if you catch yourself on one of the smaller platforms along the way. But whenever you dismount from up here, just jump towards the water, and as long as you're near a ladder from there, you're not going to be at risk of dying from fall damage or drowning. Going back to the game testers, though, for Rareware specifically, the next person credited is Jamie Williams, who's been in the industry for a while, as their first credit was on Habitat for the Commodore 64 as a handbook writer. Afterwards, they were next credited in '96 as a game tester for Donkey Kong Land 2, Killer Instinct Gold, and DKC 3. Tester on GoldenEye, Diddy Kong Racing, Donkey Kong Land 3, and Blast Corps. Post Banjo-Kazooie, they were on the viola for Heart of Darkness on PC. Donkey Kong Land 3, they were a tester. Perfect Dark, same deal. Banjo-Kazooie on 360, same deal. Their most recent credits have been on Need for Speed Shift and X-Blades on PC as either a QA tester or a forum admin. With the Jiggy on top of the smokestack grabbed, let's follow down the hole we opened earlier with the TNT crate.
Who dares enter Boss Boombox's hold? I've hidden my jigsaw. You'll never get it.
Time for what's technically in a lot of regards our first proper boss fight in the game against this giant box. As you attack it, it'll slowly break down like a Matryoshka into smaller boxes that take fewer hits. I recommend weeding out the smaller boxes as you do them one at a time so you don't have too many small boxes going at you. But if you have a lot of golden feathers, you can literally just charge face first into them to do a lot of damage very quickly and weed out the crowd. If you're not careful, this can get really crowded, though. I think I've had one playthrough where I tried to get as many boxes as I could on screen, and yeah, I don't think I finished that attempt, because I was dying pretty quickly.
Oh, you've splintered me. Take this. I didn't want it, really.
And with that, we're now done with Rusty Bucket Bay. My least favorite world in the game is done, so we can now head back to Gruntilda's lair and progress forward in it to then progress backward a little bit for reasons we will cover once we're back there. First off, we've already seen where the puzzle for the 9th world, Click Clock Wood, is. It's over near Treasure Trove Cove's entrance. But if you were paying attention when we were first there the puzzle is there, the platform you stand on to fill the puzzle isn't, so we need to find a way to get that there. But to do so, we need to actually find Click Clock Wood's entrance. And before we do that, there's also a secret I want to grab along the way, which thankfully is pretty much tied to the exact same level of progression. With the water at the height it's currently at, we can swim higher in the room prior to where Rusty Bucket Bay's entrance is. And if you do so, there is the Grunty switch Jiggy for Rusty Bucket Bay. One Jiggy left in Grunty's Bay to begin with. We can then break the grate behind it, go through this pipe, and we're going to find another water level switch we can press down. However, unlike the one that slowly raised the water in the room with Rusty Bucket Bay's entrance, this one temporarily raises the water. Off my memory, I believe it's 30 seconds? Yes, it is. That might seem a little extreme given the note door we need to use next is directly to my right now. But that's because we can use this to swim back to the room where Rusty Bucket Bay itself is, and swim higher than we could prior. And if you looked around in that room, you may have noticed there was an entrance pretty much directly above the entrance we went through right now. If you swim directly up, you can almost just barely make it in time, and doing so will allow us to access the third and final major Cheeto secret in the game. This is very tight. I almost always cut that down to the last second, but it feels comfortably tight as opposed to some of the other timers in the game. Hello again, Cheeto. Bear and Bird getting good at fighting Cheeto, so another spell they shall have.
That traitor book has pushed its luck, so in the burning fire I'll chuck.
Find Cheeto which won't. Code you must enter on Sandcastle Floor in Treasure Trove Cove is Gold Feathers. That doubles the amount of golden feathers you can have to use the Wondering ability from 10 to 20. That is easily the best of Cheeto's codes in the game. Even on playthroughs where I don't use the red feather or blue eggs code, I will often use that just to have a little bit of extra leeway, especially in the end game. I would personally recommend using that one, but hey, you can still perfectly make it through with just the base 10, assuming you have 10 at all times. But yeah, the main thing you can do from that place where the water switch is reach the next note door. You can either use the water to reach it, or I believe even just a double jump off to the side will let you reach the door or the platforms below it pretty easily. This note door in specific is 640 notes, so in the 8 worlds we've done, you need to have at least 80 notes in order to access it. With that said, again, you should probably be going for as close to maximum amount of notes in each world as you can, as there's going to be another note door or 3 after this that have continually raising values. Although, similarly to the Jiggies, if you want to do most of the things in the game, you don't need every note, you just need most of them. Which, not for nothing, I think is something that I feel like Banjo, both Kazooie and Tooie do really well. They require you to get a lot of the things to finish the game, but never all of them. Just getting close to all of them will get you a lot of extra bonuses along the way. I feel a well-designed game in general will follow that mentality, but every now and then you get one that gets weirdly tight about things. Really, in either regard, one of the few games I can think of that kind of went the exact opposite mentality was Mario Sunshine. For a game that's ultimately styled like this in Mario 64, its plot progress is actively tied to doing a certain numbered mission in every world, which, to my knowledge, is also due to some troubled development behind the scenes, but I'll save that topic more for whenever I get to Sunshine. Welcome to where the entrance to Click Clock Wood is, and if we climb this tree with the leaves and come over here, we can find a switch that will spawn in the puzzle platform for the Click Clock Wood puzzle we found in, like, what, part 4, part 3, somewhere in that range? So now we can head back there and actively open up this world. With that said, don't run all the way back. There's a faster way to do this. But first off, we want to come over here, because if you follow this platform, you find another Mumbo token. Nice to have, never really need them though. I think at this point I already have more than enough to actively get the final Mumbo transformation in the game. There was going to be a reason to get all the Mumbo tokens at one point in development, but that never even seemingly made it into the programming phase as far as I know. It was more of a conceptual phase.
Gruesome Gruntilda's favorite pastime is bursting boils.
Ah, Dr. Pimple Popper.
Tootie says she's fine with me. If you go home, I'll set her free. This poor guy called Undead Ed was her first and only boyfriend. When she was younger, Grunty used to have a greasy warthog as a pet.
Ah, she was a fan of The Lion King, gotcha. So, not too far from Bruntilda, you can actually find a little hidden passageway here in the grass that leads to a cauldron that opens up the cauldron all the way back near Treasure Trove Cove we unlocked the use of in, like, I think that may have been even part 2 or 3. So that is the largest shortcut in the game, and it's why I recommended not walking all the way back to where Treasure Trove Cove was in order to fill up the Click Cluck Wood painting. Like I said earlier in the LP, they really do reward exploration for Gruntilda's lair, arguably even more than in the main levels. And it helps that dying here doesn't really cost you anything except the extra lives, because there's no real collectibles to grab. I guess in a way I can maybe squint and consider the fact that Banjo-Tooie maybe tried to make its worlds and how they're designed a combination of the worlds of this game and of Grunty's lair to begin with some of the way progress works. And if that was the goal, honestly, it is an interesting idea, but I think either extreme feels better than what they ended up doing in Tooie. With that said, Click Clock Wood is now open, and prepare for a long haul. Click Clock Wood is far and away the largest world in the game, to the point where it's even larger in my memory, at least in terms of the time investment, than some of the early game worlds in Banjo-Tooie. Which does lead to me having some issues with it, but I'll get more into that as we actually go through the world itself. But not for nothing, and I think I may have even brought this up earlier in the LP. The scale of Click Clock Wood specifically does make for a very good ending feel to compare with what I was talking about back in the Mario 64 LP, where the latter third of that game or so feels like they kind of make some steps backwards in terms of feel just to make more intense platforming challenges rather than have worlds that feel more like the early to mid game, and thus the end game of 64 kind of feels flat to me. The end game of Banjo-Kazooie specifically actively feels appropriate for an end game. So the main mechanic of Click Clock Wood becomes prevalent pretty quickly, as the first room here is a plus-shaped room with 4 doors that are all closed. But if you look around, there is a switch directly behind us that's going to open one of these doors up. You can get a pretty good feel for what these doors are themed about from both the icons above them and the area surrounding them. They're themed around seasons. Click Clock Wood, in effect, is you going through one, I guess thinking about a more medium-sized world, 4 different times in different seasons to grab different jiggies, different collectibles, or other items that are spawned in that season exclusively. And you make your way through the order of seasons, starting in spring. The main setup of Click Clock Wood in the main part of the world is that there's a giant tree the world is centered around, like the one we saw in the painting, or puzzle rather. From there, there's many things you can do on the ground floor, but the main focus of the world is on the roots and tree branches of the tree itself as you climb it. The best thing to figure out about this world quickly is a route you feel comfortable with, because you're going to be doing it 4 different times with minor variations. I like to go around the center of the floor first, at ground level, just to grab things that are safer, as that way there's less risk in any given season of me dying later into it and losing more things. With that said, easily the biggest killer here in Click Clock Wood, especially if you look up just to see the true scale of this world, is fall damage. Falling off the tree can be costly. In some seasons, there's at least a saving grace because there's a water feature around a good half of the tree you can potentially try to aim into. But my mentality is, whenever you do a jump here near the tree, wait until the last second to do your double jump flutter to get more distance, because that way if you miss the jump to begin with, you'll have it when you fall. Otherwise, if you're thinking you want to fall down and you don't want to risk things, always do the ground pound trick, because that'll really save you some pain. Our first goal here, outside of some notes I've already grabbed at this point, is this little garden patch here on the one side of the tree. There's a hole in the middle of it, and like with many things in the game, where there's a hole, there's a place to deposit some eggs. Deposit, I believe, 5 in, and a plant starts sprouting. That is the end of this area for now here in Click Clock Wood, because several of the jiggies in Click Clock Wood also take advantage of all 4 seasons for individual steps of the process. So when we come back here in the next season, we can do something a little bit more to that plant to help it grow a little bigger and all that jazz. This entire world really is just a prototype for what Banjo-Tooie would do in every world it really had. But I don't mind it too much here, again, because it's the end game, it feels kind of grand and all that. It's annoying, and I have definitely had playthroughs where I die near the end of this world and I don't have all the jiggies or notes yet, and I do just kind of stop the playthrough there because it stabs me in the heart losing that much progress at the last second in this world that it kind of demotivates me. It's very similar to realizing you missed a scan log in any of the Metroid Prime games. After that enemy is no longer obtainable, especially when you're at like the 50 to 70% mark where you're just like, oh man, now I'm just gonna know that's missing the entire game. Missing it early enough, you're like, okay, I can restart or reload an old save and probably go get that. And missing it near the end, you're like, well, I'm already almost there, so I might as well finish it. It's when you're at like the 50 to 70% mark of a world or thing like that, where it really just stabs you. And that's happened to me here several times over the years. With that said, while I'm climbing more of the tree, let's go back to talking about the Rareware game testers. In specific, there's only 2 left. Next up is Andrew Wilson, who started off as a QA tester on Diddy Kong Racing, then they worked on this, and they were on the dev team similarly for Donkey Kong 64. They were just in the special thanks for Banjo-Tooie of all things, and then they were seemingly just in support moving forward for Rare, working on things like support for Mickey Speedway USA, Perfect Dark, Conker's Bad Fur Day, Star Fox Adventures, and they kept with Rare after the Microsoft purchase, working as a producer on Grab by the Ghoulies. Saberwolf, they were in the thanks. Mr. Pants, they were a hanger-on. Perfect Dark Zero and Cameo Elements of Power, they were on localization production, same with Viva Pinata on the 360. Post Nuts and Bolts, where they were seemingly just on the paper shuffling, scheduling, and shouting type deal. They were just part of the family on the production team, working on things like Banjo-Tooie's 360 port, Connect Sports Season 1 and 2, Connect Sports Rivals. But like several other people we've talked about thus far, they actively left Rare to help form Playtonic Games, being on the team for Yooka-Laylee and the Impossible Lair, a producer on the original Yooka-Laylee, a producer on Demon Turf, and the 2 most recent credits are Corpo Nation, The Sorting Process as a publisher, and Elsie on Windows as a Playtonic friend. The final game tester here on the N64 release is David Wong, who is actively still with Rare today. They started as a tester on GoldenEye, then they worked on Diddy Kong Racing, Donkey Kong Land 3, and Blast Corps, then this. And they were then a tester moving forward with Mickey's Racing Adventure all the way through to the post-Microsoft purchase, where they were a lead tester on Star Fox Adventure, quality assurance on Grab by the Ghoulies, test team on Perfect Dark Zero, and a Cameo Elements of Power.
Nabnuts likes acorns. I'll just eat a few more.
Keep in mind Nabnuts for later, and always enter his room in every single season you can, because when there's not notes or things like that, there's things like Mumbo tokens you can use, and Nabnuts himself might have a jiggy for us later on. Before I wrap up to finish off David Wong's credits list, they're still at Rare today working as a tester on things like Sea of Thieves, and their most recent credit overall was as a quality assurance tester over on the 2020 Battletoads game. But with that, I'm going to need to end this off here. Thank you guys for watching, and in part 14, we continue Click Clock Wood. There's a lot to do here, and trust me, we're going to be here for a bit. See you guys then.